All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Founders Cut. Today I'm here with James Farrow. He is the CEO and co founder of Cyft. And I wanted to talk to you today because, I'll be honest with you, being in the space of VC, I haven't heard of many companies doing what you're doing. And it really was a little bit of a new learning experience to try to learn about the market, learn about the opportunity, learn about the company. And so as a result of that, maybe want to throw you on here just in case someone else might be out there trying to understand your marketplace a little bit better. Maybe they need your services actually. But before we dive into what you're actually doing, want to talk more about you as the founder. So, who are you? What were you doing before you became a co-founder of a tech company?
Yeah, Adam, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. And who am I? And how did I get here? That's a big question. Well, I feel like I really had no business on paper becoming a CEO of a tech startup. Neither one of my parents were in business. They didn't finish college. I didn't have any gateways or experience at a young age into technology, but I was a seller and I would sell 50-cent CDs out of my middle school locker. I mean, I was mowing lawns. I was always starting businesses at a young age just to have some pocket change, when you're young. And I grew up in a fairly wealthy area and I was the poor kid on the block. And so I was hustling all the time, selling candy in bulk, just trying to make money. And fast forward into my mid 20s, and I had a buddy of mine, Nick Boyce. Shout out to Nick, love you, buddy. And he introduced me to Arctic Wolf. It's a cybersecurity startup here in Minnesota. I think they're like a deca unicorn now, but I was employed 230, and I was selling again and was breaking records as soon as I got there, all the way up the ranks. Ended up breaking the all-time sales record at Arctic Wolf in my third quarter in the field. And it was through that experience where I really fell in love with technology and started learning about startups. So I left Arctic Wolf. I went to a smaller cybersecurity startup, a direct competitor, just so I could get a little closer to that inception point. What does it feel like when you're one of the first three sellers on the team? And what are people thinking about in building? I started reading books and talking to customers. And I identified a business constraint that I felt like I was the right person to solve. So I connected with my two co-founders. Both of them are technical, brilliant, and we launched Cyft in April. And just this last week on Tuesday, signed our first customer for $30,000 in annual recurring revenue.
Congratulations. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Well, before we do that, I want to hit on something that I think founders that are listening to this need to understand, which is like you could have the best idea in the world, you could have the best team in the world, you could have the most passion in the world, but James hit it right on the head. You got to be able to sell. You got to be a salesperson, right? And so like I think that's a skill whether you have it naturally or you need to learn it. I'm sure when you were selling your first CDs, you weren't the best salesperson, right? But over time, by the time you got to that last CD in the spindle, you had your talking points down to a T. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really, really important that founders everywhere know that inherently from the ground up, you're building your sales story, right? You're selling a story on you as the founder, whether you're trying to get investors or customers. You're telling the story to new employees that you're trying to hire, and certainly you're trying to tell the story to the rest of the world that what you're building is important. So no, I really appreciate you recognizing that in yourself, and then leveraging that to start a company. And quite honestly, like it's a skill that will give you a competitive advantage to know that you are good at sales, right? So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I want to touch on something there too for the people who are listening. Sales is kind of the first skill, right, in the stack of three. It's sales, marketing, and then product. And product's really the most valuable, but it's not supported without marketing, which isn't supported without sales. You have to know how to close deals. But the most important skill, in my opinion, as a founder is learning how to learn because the answers are all out there. Some of the smartest people in the world who have done exactly what you want to do synthesize what they believe are the greatest lessons that they learned into a book and then give it to you for 15 bucks. And so learning how to learn, I think, was the biggest difference that transformed me from someone that just knows how to sell to someone that can build a company. And I just wanted to share that piece because I think it's so important and not enough people talk about the skill of learning and how important that is, especially for a first time founder.
Yeah, you talk about your stack, your pyramid. I would say 9 out of 10 founders inverse it, right? They put
Hmm.
product on the bottom, then marketing, and then sales, right? They think if you build a great product and then market it the right way, it'll sell itself. In reality, you kind of got to do the sales first, and then supplement with the other two. So I like the visual that you kind of create with that. So let's jump into it. Like, what are you building, and why is it necessary?
So, contrary to I think the way most people think about building a startup, as a founding team, we didn't look for a problem to solve. Through selling millions of dollars with over 60 value added resellers, who's our customer, and conducting 67 user interviews with IT buyers, we actually identified a business constraint. And it was a business constraint that was suffocating the revenue growth of an entire market segment. And that constraint was that value added resellers who don't modernize with AI face rapid customer attrition. And so I told that to a potential client 6 days ago, that client that signed up, and it resonated so deeply. This is a fear and a business constraint that is truly keeping up the CEOs at these value added resellers. Is how are we going to operate 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What is that going to look like? What is AI going to do to our industry? And how are we preparing ourselves? And so Cyft is an AI tech suite designed for value added resellers. And I'll tell you where we're starting. We're starting by automating project summaries and improving customer engagement because those are two revenue drivers. And so instead of looking for a problem, we identified a business constraint, and it's because the ultimate goal of our customer and every other business in B2B is to make more money. And so we didn't want to be something that saved people time. We didn't want to build something that saved people money. We wanted to be something that helped people make money. And we believe that if we can build a product that's more valuable and makes them more money than the cost they're paying us, they'll be a customer forever.
So, talk a little bit more about the industry that you're selling into first, because obviously you could probably do this in multiple industries, right? So, why did you start in cybersecurity?
I started in cybersecurity because that's where I had a competitive advantage from a domain expertise standpoint. It was purely just because that's the bucket where I had a network, I had expertise. And I met all of these value added resellers. And for those who don't know, a VAR is kind of like a real estate agent for buying technology. You, as a business, tell them what you need. They book showings with multiple different products and then help you with the purchasing process and the implementation. And those folks, they help a lot of businesses evaluate and procure technology, but there was no one that was focusing on making that process easier for them. And so when I was selling with these companies, I realized the different inefficiencies in their business. And then when I started talking to them more as a startup founder, I really got deeper into the problem and how Cyft might be able to solve it. So that's who we're selling to, and kind of how we started identifying the business constraints that we're looking to solve out of the gates.
I'm gonna ask a question that I hope
Sure.
doesn't put you in hot water, and if it does, we'll scrub it later. But is there a world where your platform can actually replace the value-added reseller, or do you see the value-added reseller as something that will always be necessary in cybersecurity or beyond? Because I know that there's other people that do it in other verticals as well.
I think it will take a very long time to replace the trust and comfort that customers feel when they work with an expert for very complicated technology purchases and implementations.
Sure.
In this market, it's not as transactional as just buying a car. These are people that understand your business, they understand your compliance requirements, your tech stack, and you work with them for 10, 15, 20 years. So these are very important relationships to the entire technology industry. And I don't see it being replaced fully by AI anytime soon. And I may eat those words, 3 years from now. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think it would take a very, very long time to replace the human element that comes with working with an IT consultant.
So essentially, the way you'd use the real estate market as an analogy. To me, it almost gives me the feeling of like a a a sports athlete and their agent, right? The
Sure.
sports athlete could certainly sign their own contracts, but they work with an agent because they like the expertise, domain expertise that the agent might have, the relationships that the agent might have, the understanding of things that the athlete, or in this case the business owner, might not know, but the person that they're working with has a better idea of. So yeah, I think I can totally see how the trust aspect plays a very big part in whether or not the industry moves completely away from a third party and works directly with consumers or customers, I guess. Um, how long have you been working on this now?
We started our journey back in April of 2023. And originally we were building for the end user, but we quickly realized through user interviews that they didn't want another dashboard to log into. This is a community, and specifically the cybersecurity community, that is already overwhelmed with information overload. And so, in order to make a change for the largest audience and to touch as many businesses as possible, we needed to work with the consultants who had the clients who we were originally targeting. And if we can help them, they can help the clients. And that created sort of a network effect for us. And we also struggled with some early customer acquisition just to get some initial design partners reaching out to the individual businesses. Again, they have so much going on. And we felt like we were kind of trying to find a needle in a haystack because we'd niched down so far into a smaller subset of cybersecurity and then a smaller customer segment. So we met as a team and asked the question, how do we go after the hay instead of the needle? And we came up with targeting the value added resellers, targeting the consultants that help the customers that we originally set out to help. And when we made that pivot, we built a really crappy MVP and put it in front of a customer. And within 18 hours, they signed up.
I love that. So in way less than a year, you've gone from forming a company to locking in your first significant contract. So huge kudos to you and your team for going from concept to cash generation
Thank you.
in
And I,
a
I want to add one thing there, if that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the lessons that I learned, one of the mistakes or failures that I made as a first time CEO was trying to validate our idea through user interviews and through research and reading. And I think I wasted a lot of time in fear of maybe not knowing the exact next step. And what I realized is that you can't read your way to revenue. And the best way to validate if you're building something that people want to pay for is to ask them to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's scary as a first time founder. You're unsure. You're building a product that's nothing like what you envision in your mind. And you want to explain to everyone how big this is going to be. And hey, don't look at what we're doing now, but this is what it's going to look like. And you're trying to paint this big story and this big vision. But the truth is, you need to find customers who have the problem you're solving and are willing to pay for it and then grow with you over time. And that was one of the things when I self reflected just on my first 6 months as a CEO. That was one of my early failures that I'm proud of and excited that I was able to recognize that. And when I look back 15 years from now, it would be unreasonable to assume that I'd be a perfect CEO and not make any mistakes. But what would be worse is if I made all these mistakes and didn't learn from them and then didn't share that with other people. So if you're building something and you're not stoked about what it looks like, but you think you're onto something, go try and sell it. Like it's hard, it sucks, you're going to get no's, but selling it is the best way to get validation.
Yeah, and it's the easiest opportunity for you to ask without putting the buyer in a hard spot, like why they said yes or no to it, right? Even if, like you said, it sucks, but you want to hear the reasons why they don't think whatever you're putting in front of them isn't worth them opening up their wallets.
Exactly.
At the same time, though, like I think, I'll push back a little bit and say hindsight's 2020, but if you didn't do that customer discovery work that you did, you probably wouldn't have built something that could sell easily too. So there's a middle ground somewhere in there, right? Where
Yeah,
you
and
do
I'm
need to
not
do the
saying don't do
yeah,
customer
yeah,
discovery. Like
yeah,
I am a Steve Blank aficionado. I love customer discovery. I think that is the way that you build an excellent company and an
yeah,
excellent product. But using that as
yeah,
your way to validate whether you're building the right thing or not,
yeah,
I think is the mistake. And the only way to get true validation from the market is to get paying
yeah.
customers.
There are certainly founders out there that are too much driven on the surveys and the questions, and there's some founders that are too much driven on just building products without asking.
Hmm.
The real answer is it's iterative, right? You need to do both,
Hmm.
and use both of them to quality check one another, right? So
Hmm.
ask the customers, but also build the product. And yeah, I totally agree with you. You can't negate either of them. I think
Hmm.
the general takeaway is like, yeah, step out of your comfort zone and go and try to sell the thing and see what
Yeah.
people tell you, and you'll get answers that you won't get from just a survey that you might throw out there asking people basic questions. Um,
Absolutely.
tell me something. Tell me about like what's coming up then down the pipeline. You made your first sale. What big goals do you have for 2024?
2024, we intend to close a seed round. Selling is going to be my total focus in Q1 is acquiring at least 5 more customers in Q1 so that way we can position ourselves to raise a proper seed round and really build this company. I think with you know 10 to 15 MRR, we'll be in a good position to say, "Hey, we have a problem that people are willing to pay to solve, and here's the product and how we've iterated over the previous few months to get to this point, and then here's what we want to do next." And so the big goal is number one, to raise the capital so we can really build a company rather than just a product with 3 co-founders. And then from there, we intend to really focus on customer acquisition, less from a direct sales standpoint to how do we systematize finding customers, bring them into our pipeline, and then closing deals, and then tracking deal velocity and all the different knobs on the customer acquisition spectrum so that we can optimize a cost efficient and scalable way to acquire customers and really build a business.
Yeah, I love it. In terms of the new customers, give me a little bit of insight, and maybe you can't say it, and if you can't, that's totally fine. You sign that deal with your first customer. What kind of ROI are you kind of alluding to that they're going to be able to achieve by investing, 5 figures a year to your platform?
Yeah, our goal with our initial customers is that they will close at least one additional deal within 12 months. So we're very early in our product lifespan, but we intend to build very quickly. And the goal is that over the first 12 months, they'll close a deal of equal or greater value than the cost of Cyft. And if we can do that, then we know that our customers will stay with us and build with us over the long term.
Sure, sure. So pay for itself at a minimum, and then
Mhm.
sky's the limit, obviously, depending on how good they are as salespeople themselves, right? If people want to find you and learn more about the services or the raise or new job opportunities down the road, like how can people find you all?
Yeah, add us on LinkedIn. James Farrow, Farrow, Mark Lapointe, Cole Consul. Those are the 3 co-founders. All of us are on LinkedIn. We're always open to connect.
Love it, love it. Any advice for first-time founders? You already gave out a few good nuggets early on, but like something else that you think is really important for anyone out there that might be thinking about going from corporate or startup life and starting their own thing?
I think the biggest thing is there's going to be a lot of fear because there's a lot of unknown. And when we look at some of the greatest founders in history, it seems like they had all the answers the whole time. But if you read their books and their blogs and you watch their interviews, they were figuring it out just like the rest of us. Not just in the seed stage, but through IPOs and post IPOs, they're all just figuring it out as they go. And I think that fear in the very beginning really stems around, at least for myself, I'll talk from my own experience, was should I quit my job and go full time on this when I think it'll work, but I don't, will it work? I don't know. I was making really good money as a seller. And so Sometimes people go into entrepreneurship because they have nothing to lose, but I had a lot to lose. I was doing really well for myself. And so it took a lot of belief in myself and courage to make that leap and decide this is the path that I'm going to be on. And so if you're in that point in your life where you have that corporate job and you think you have a really good idea and you want to start working on something, just start. Stay at your job, start talking to customers, start talking to other people in that sphere, and just get involved. And over time, I think the validation and the learnings from just talking to people and talking to customers helps build that conviction so you can finally make that leap that you've been wanting to make for so long. So that's what I'd say is if you're afraid, that's okay, it's normal, but get out and talk to customers and get out and talk to peers in the space, and hopefully you can build the conviction to make the jump.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you started in April. How long did you think about it before you actually officially, you know, put that vintage year of April of 2023?
I was probably thinking about, I mean, I've been thinking about doing a tech startup for at least a year or so, but it wasn't until maybe January 2023 when I identified where I think I could really help the market. And I had to learn a lot. I mean, I kind of zoomed in from the outerverse into the startup ecosystem. I had to learn what the hell a startup was, VCs, all the different terms, and how to build a product and all these things. And so I think about January was when I really ramped it up. And then April, I had enough conviction in what we were building that I decided to go full time.
Okay, so you went full time after about 4 months of that exploration and educational time,
And I
and
was
to
talking to customers every day while I
yeah,
was still full time employed.
yeah. No, I got you. I got you. Well, James, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. It's evident why you are good at what you do. It's been a good interview, and appreciate all the insights you provided. Any parting words, shout outs that you want to throw out there?
I'd love to give a big shout out to Mark and Cole, my two technical co founders. Their talent and ambition outgrew the innovation team at Medtronic, so much so that they struck out on their own with me with one goal, and it's to build a world class product. And I wouldn't be able to do it without Mark and Cole. So I want to give a big shout out to those two. They are the heartbeat of Cyft.
Hey, I love it when the startup world snipes some people from the corporate world. So I'll always provide a hat tip to that for sure. Well, James, I really appreciate your time. So if anyone's out there listening and wants to learn more about the product, their company, their whatever else James might be working on, find him on LinkedIn and give him a shout. It's been a pleasure and appreciate your time and thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam.